Hi everyone, it's Colleen, and it is Tuesday, June 7th, 2016, and this is Haggie Reads for you on Haggie Shack Radio at haggieshack.com. And today I'm going to pick up where I left off last week with The Children of the Law of One, The Lost Teachings of Atlantis by John Peniel. That Big Dealer in the Sky. The following is also an example, one of thousands I could give you of how the universal spirit manipulated events through the hierarchy. This particular example shows how a life was changed, and the ripples and cause and effect forged karmic ties. Actually, because it is a brief example, it doesn't really show the extent of the changes that really took place, but it will give you an idea of the big picture involved. This next story takes place after my final year at the monastery. After attaining the final initiation, enlightenment, I had begun the easier/harder work, that of an adept, a true teacher. But I was needed in other places, so at age 21, I left the monastery and began my work. My employer was the universal spirit. No teamsters, but we had a great union. Then, as now, I wandered parts of the world, following the direction and guidance of the universal will. I owned nothing but my monk's robes. No home, no car, no other clothes. No money. I never begged, nor even asked for anything. Yet I never went hungry, never needed a ride, never lacked shelter or a place to sleep, and I always had whatever money I needed. When God is your employer, and your life is truly dedicated toward serving others rather than dedicated to self-survival, such things aren't an issue anymore. God is the true provider of all things, and provided for all those day-to-day needs for its humble servant, but everything could come through a variety of normal or strange sources. Often they were offered by strangers whom I had just met, who were going through something intense in their lives, and sought out my assistance. Some just needed a shoulder to cry on. Such people had always desperately prayed or called out to God for help or guidance at some time in their lives before we met. Sometimes amazing things happened around, through me, as the universal spirit used me as an instrument of its will. The following story is just one of many similar instances. One day, I was walking through the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. I passed by a door of an office building and heard what sounded like live band music. I felt like stopping and looking in the door. As I looked in, I saw someone I knew from school that I had attended as a child. He had once been my best friend. He was in a rock band that was rising to success, and they were practicing there. The space was rented by their manager, specifically for practice sessions. My old friend was very surprised to see me, shocked by my monk's garb, and how something indefinable was very different about me, other than the obvious appearances. As we were still greeting each other, his manager came in and handed him a paycheck for their last performance. With check in hand, he grabbed his jacket and said to me, "I'd really like to visit right now, but I have to run down to the casino to cash my check. Of course you're welcome to come with me if you want." I said fine, and we were on our way. I soon discovered my friend had become a serious gambling addict. We got to the casino. He cashed his check, then headed straight for the gaming tables. Many of you may not be familiar with addiction syndromes, especially gambling, but it is a sad and strange thing to witness. He'd gotten the scent and was so focused and preoccupied with getting his gambling fix, I may as well not even been there. To him, I almost didn't exist at that moment. The casino had a strange atmosphere, stranger than normal. It turned out there was a dealer strike, and the dealers that were there were strike breakers or scabs. We walked up to a blackjack table and sat down. The dealer looked me over with an unpleasant grin. With a not-so-subtle hostility, he told me I could not sit next to my friend unless I gambled. My friend put down $2 on the spot in front of me. The dealer said, "Fine. Now, we aren't supposed to talk about sex, religion, or politics. I'm going to talk about all three." Then he looked at me again and said, "You look like some kind of freaked-out rabbi or something." I was an odd sight for a patron of a Las Vegas casino. I was wearing a monk's robe, sandals, and I had a beard and long hair that hadn't been cut in many years. As the dealer dealt the cards, he began to verbally attack me with insulting questions about me and my beliefs. Interestingly enough, though, all his hostile inquisitions were valid spiritual questions, if you ignored the insults they were cloaked in. Insults can only upset the selfish, separate self's defenses, sometimes called ego. By this time in my life, nothing offended me. He found no target at which his ego-insulting arrows could strike, so all he managed to get out of me were answers to his questions. Answers given calmly and lovingly. All the time this was going on, we were gambling, but since other forces were involved, the hierarchy and universal will, I wasn't gambling at all. I was just winning, every hand. I wasn't even paying attention to anything but the questions and answers. This particular casino played with the customer's cards face up, and the dealer was assuming that I was playing the standard way, stand on 17 or over, and take a card on less, unless I signaled him otherwise. So he dealt my cards accordingly, but I wasn't playing. I just answered his questions and ignored my cards. I didn't do anything with the original $2. I just let it keep doubling with every winning hand. This table was using what's called a 4-deck shoe for the cards. It held 4 decks of cards that would be played before a new shuffle would take place. By the time it was over, I had not lost one hand, and that $2 in chips became a mountain of chips worth thousands. This alone was blowing the dealer's mind. But simultaneously, the whole time this miraculous winning was going on, we had discussed everything from creation to the ozone layer and the coming earth changes, and all my answers had rung his inner bell of truth. The dealer began to get shaky. The odds of anyone just letting a bet ride and winning every hand in a 4-deck shoe were astronomical, virtually impossible, and no one would know that better than a dealer. My vibration, composure, and answers to his questions resonated within the center of his being. Combining all this with my appearance, what people generally consider Jesus looked like, was too much for him. He was relieved by his supervisor, and another dealer took over our table. All the money was lost with the first hand from the new dealer. To me, my winning was clearly for the benefit of the dealer, my friend, and a few others at the table. But my shaky previous dealer had headed off to the bar behind us, and was chug-a-lugging straight Scotch as fast as he could pour. Minutes later, I sensed something behind me. I turned, and there was the dealer walking towards me like a zombie, with one arm outstretched and shaking. He came up to me and touched my shoulder as if to see if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't really there, or I was actually some delusion that came from a bottle of Scotch. But alas, I was real. He turned around, went back to the bar, and continued to drink. This incident had a dramatic impact on my gambling-addicted friend, too. But that is another story, not for this book. Many years later, I visited an organic farm in a rural community in the south-central part of the U.S. A very happy, friendly neighbor came over to visit, and before too long he told me his amazing life story. Apparently, this nice man had been a blackjack dealer in Las Vegas, and for some unknown reason, he had a total nervous breakdown while dealing during a strike, and completely lost all of his memory and mental programming. The breakdown left him as blank as a child, and he had to completely re-educate himself, all from a bed in a psychiatric hospital ward. He also reprogrammed himself with the help of the psychiatrists. He had a basically Freudian view of the world and didn't believe in synchronicity or such things, yet. Another story. With his new outlook on life, he semi-retired, happily breeding dogs at his little rural home in the woods. Do I need to tell you who this particular ex-blackjack dealer was? Chapter 11. Subconscious Programming and Beliefs. My reunion with the dealer from Las Vegas, whom we'll call Bob, reminded me of my earlier training at the monastery regarding beliefs, programming, and the power of beliefs. Bob had no memory of me, or a great deal of his previous life, for that matter. He had actually retrained his mind, reprogrammed his beliefs and way of thinking, and been programmed by others in the psychiatric hospital. Because of what he was exposed to, given to read and taught, he had strong feelings and beliefs based on the theories of the famous father of psychiatry, Sigmund Freud. And thus, for the most part, he viewed the world through Freudian-colored glasses. Bob had a relaxed, easy life, and was a kind and gentle man now, whose only vice was an addiction to football games on TV. He didn't really believe in God. I, as the other children, believed that his kindness and compassion were more important than his beliefs. And compassion wasn't just an intellectual concept to him. He took a job as a jailer on a graveyard shift, so he could bring a little kindness and joy to some of the inmates. He would make people hot chocolate, play chess or checkers with them, talk about their problems, etc., whereas most other jailers in there treated the prisoners anywhere from coldly to sadistically. Because of Bob's programming, he believed that absolutely everything that occurred in people's lives were totally dictated by the subconscious, which is partially true to a very great extent, but without the other pieces of the puzzle, and the inclusion of even 2% of our lives being controlled by free will choices, it misses by a mile. So to him, the prisoners were nothing but the unconscious pawns of their subconscious. Bob also didn't believe in synchronicity, which was a theory from Freud's rival psychiatrist, Carl Jung, who seemed to have a much more universal way of understanding the events in human life. Of course, Bob's viewpoint necessitated the disbelief that humans had free will at all. In his mind, everything was totally dictated by the subconscious. He believed that not one single action or thought was freely chosen, generated, or accidental, which could also be called coincidental or synchronistic in any way. It was all totally generated by the subconscious. Because of this, in a strange way, he was a fatalist who believed everything was predestined, but not predestined via anything metaphysical or spiritual. People's lives were totally destined by the subconscious mind, and there was nothing they could do about it, because even if they thought they were having a new or free thought, It was merely the subconscious still generating it. It is true that about 98% of everyone's thoughts and actions are dictated by the subconscious. But again, that 2% makes all the difference in the world. Anyway, the karmic tie between us that had started with his dealing to me at that blackjack table was not over yet, and he eventually became a very good friend and a householder of sorts. Through the combination of our interactions, conversations, and events that would ensue, Bob slowly and begrudgingly began to grasp that there were other powers at work in the universe other than the subconscious mind, and he came to understand that there were free will choices people would make, regardless of the influence and control of the subconscious. But at the same time, oddly enough, he didn't even have a clue as to just how powerful the subconscious mind really was. Of course, there was a time when I didn't understand it either. Back when I was an elder monk at the monastery, one of my final changes was to deal with my programming and beliefs. I had to deal with so many issues, mostly from how I had been raised as a child. Everything has programming like this. Whatever culture we've been raised in, we are sort of brainwashed from birth on by our society, family, friends, etc., and we create some of our own programming from our blind personal experiences. The ancient Atlantean teachings of the children regarding programming of the subconscious mind and belief structures are quite unique and very in-depth. They cover all aspects of the subject, including the effects of your beliefs, how beliefs work, and analyzing your beliefs and programming. Then they go a step further and teach how to change your own program once you've made your analysis and are ready to make free will choices to alter your beliefs and programming. At some point near the end of my training, I became very ill with a prostate infection. I finally went to Zayn and asked his advice for healing it. I was expecting herbal remedies and healing regimes, but instead I was told that the problem was basically from certain conscious and subconscious negative programming and blocks, and he recommended that I fast, contemplate the issue, and then speak with him again. The prostate problems were related to sexual blocks I'd been raised with, but they were really a side issue, more importantly. I was about to begin really learning, realizing, out of necessity, the teachings about the vital importance of beliefs and working with the layers of the mind. The following are excerpts from various texts about the subjects. The mind is three. One of the three lives below the surface. It can be a helpmate who performs great tasks, or hinder us at every turn. Tend it you must, like a garden. Remove the seeds of destruction, and water the seeds of life. Belief is the great key to the powers controlled by the mind. What you believe is real in the realms of the mind. The realms of the mind are reality to those experiencing them. The masses believe what others have given them, right or wrong, true or false. The wise realize this and are wary, and set out to test and discover. Change comes only to the sincere. The power of belief. Early in the book, we mentioned how belief can be such a powerful force that it can cause war, murder, prejudice, great temples to be built, etc. I just mentioned how my own beliefs created prostate problems. We all have different and many aspects to our own programming that are unique little problems within ourselves. But there are many things that your beliefs dramatically impact upon in your life, or even fundamentally control in totality. Your personal beliefs radically affect your life, your future, and they are all within your power to change. Belief and the powers of the mind. Before my days at the monastery, I was attending a university. To make a long story short, I flunked high school, was expelled, supposedly had a genius IQ, and ended up in college instead. In one of my classes, the professor gave a hypnosis demonstration. I witnessed people who were so well hypnotized that when they were told that a burning cigar was being touched to the palm of their hand, blisters instantly appeared, even though only an unlit cigar was touched to their hand. But, as the years have gone by in my life, I have witnessed far more amazing and strange things. Believe it or not, it really doesn't matter to me. I have seen objects moved with thought. I've seen hand-to-hand combat, where no flesh ever made contact. I've seen bodies tossed about like rag dolls by energies invisible to the normal human eye. I've seen people with bad cuts stop bleeding by thinking it so. I've seen people stop their heart and stop breathing without dying. I've seen monks in the Himalayas sit in the snow in conditions that were so cold that as they were wrapped in wet blankets, the blankets froze about them. After many layers of blankets were applied, the monks would visualize heat within themselves, radiating out. The blankets would defrost, and a circle of melted snow would appear around them. Their degree of mental accomplishment was measured by the size of the circle around them, and I've seen far more. The hypnosis demonstrations in college were mysterious and remarkable enough, but after witnessing the monks melting the ice, I asked Zayn how such things were done. After having me read what was called the Tibetan Treatise of Psychic Heat, he began teaching me all the details of the power of the mind. It began with this discussion. Your beliefs control and affect the incredible powers of the mind, which dictate or influence many things in your life. Your choices, and thus your course in life, and what you create in your life. Your ability to learn and apply your knowledge. Your health, whether or not you foster sickness or wellness. Your ability to draw upon or squander inner strength. The energy aspects of inner strength are universal life energy. It is an energy that bridges the gap between physical and spiritual. It flows through all things, all life, and can be consciously or subconsciously manipulated by the mind. It can heal, and it can destroy. The same energy is called chi or ki or reiki in some cultures. Note, CLO, Children of the Law of One, energy techniques are the source of all others, far more complete, advanced, than what is now called reiki or chi. I learned a little about ki from martial arts training I had as a young teenager. But it's really a minor energy in a sense. Far more importantly, your beliefs affect your ability to flow with and allow to flow the ultimate power, that of the universal spirit. Belief and the powers of the mind and knowledge. Is this power learned through knowledge, intellectually, or through the intuitive training? Using your mind to influence your body or elements requires a firm foundation, a base of information and knowledge, roots. The more know-how you have about mental techniques, and the more you understand the reasons why and how they work, the more effective they will be for you. Also, the more you know about how your body works, physiologically or biologically, the better. This applies especially to those areas of functioning that relate to any changes or controls you wish to exert on your body or mind. It is not really necessary to have any understanding of such physiological functions. After all, the subconscious mind has been performing vast, powerful, and intricate functions quite automatically and with no help from us. But the more a person knows about his internal biological working, the more effective mental manipulation of the body can be. And it is relatively easy to gain a basic grasp of the physiological functions of the body. Oh, no problem, I'll just go read Gray's Anatomy tonight, or Da Vinci's Studies, or better yet, I'll go back to the States and dig up some dead bodies and conduct my own autopsies. Or maybe you should be a comedian and go on the Ed Sullivan Show, Peniel. Are we done with the sarcasm? He said with a smile. I nodded affirmatively and also with a smile. Assumption, a key to the power of belief. Other than digging up dead bodies, he smirked, for direct knowledge, part of having a good foundation of knowledge is understanding the way belief works. One powerful key to the working of belief is assumption. Assumption functions like a catalyst and provides us with the means to effect tremendous changes, including changes in our physical bodies. When we assume something, our subconscious accepts it as an accomplished fact and proceeds to manifest it in the body. Assuming assumption does not require anything on the order of blind faith. Rather, it's based on facts that are well established. You see, your belief in the power of assumption will come from areas of this foundation. The information base that you're acquiring from your learning here, from your teachers, your studies of the ancient texts, and your practices and applications are all providing you with the facts you need to know about how the mind can dramatically alter physiology. In essence, your belief in the power of belief will be the result and the summary of all the other information contained in your foundation. To help you readers of this book along similar lines, we will provide you with some examples of the mind's physical effects from various research studies, as well as the hows and whys of such occurrences. Mind and body in search of unity. The children of Atlantis have always known about the effects of the mind on the physical plane, including the physical body, and used this knowledge in practical applications. Now, recent scientific studies substantiate the effects of the mind on the body in many ways. For one, new research indicates that a very high percentage of illnesses may be mentally/emotionally originated. In fact, mental/emotional triggers are involved with the majority of people suffering from a wide spectrum of diseases today. If a person can become psychosomatically ill, then doesn't it follow that a person can become psychosomatically healthy? Or, taking it further, create desired physiological changes in the body. The primary point to keep in mind, which has been demonstrated by numerous studies and scientific research, is that psychological changes create physical changes. In other words, your mind affects your body. A new view. Although the prevailing school of thought in medicine is still leaning toward the physical effect on the body viewpoint, as opposed to fully accepting the ramifications of the mental effect on the body viewpoint, things have changed and are still changing, sometimes with a vengeance. More and more, the separate realms are being considered together. Chemicals, hormones, electrical impulses, etc., are being looked at in light of their effect on the mind and emotions. But possibly even more important, the mind and emotions are being looked at in the light of their effect on chemicals, hormones, electrical impulses, and much more. The effect the mind can have on the body is almost staggering when you first realize it. It seems unbelievable at times, yet there it is, a veritable mountain of individual personal experiences that attest to the facts. The mind's power over the body is very real indeed. The placebo effect. Most of you are familiar with the term placebo. A placebo is an inert substance, like a sugar pill, that has the effect of an actual drug, the drug the person taking it believes it is. This effect occurs because the person taking the placebo is told that it is a drug, and just assumes that it is. There it is again, assumption and belief. A question of the patient's suggestibility comes in here. Contrary to the common myth that people with high suggestibility have low intelligence, the truth is that the higher the intelligence, the greater the benefits from using placebos can be, as long as the assumption is there. When a physician uses suggestion to fool a patient into assuming that a placebo is really a powerful, beneficial drug, it doesn't matter how intense or elaborate that suggestion is. Often, it doesn't take much to generate a belief. A simple smile from the physician can be as effective as 48 hours of intensely indoctrinating the patient about the effectiveness of the placebo. It just depends on what the patient believes about how effective it will truly be. This is usually quite substantial because most people have a great deal of faith, belief factor again, in their doctors. If their doctor prescribes a medicine or a treatment for them, then it must be good and worthwhile. Thus, the faith in the doctor translates into the patient's assumption or belief about the potency of the treatment. The mind follows the lead of the belief and actually makes physical changes in the body to match the presumed effects of the drug that the individual assumes has been taken. Zayn said pretty much the same thing. You may have heard of a doctor prescribing a sugar pill without the patient knowing it, with the result of beneficial effects on the patient's health. A doctor may prescribe a sugar pill to avoid giving a patient who just seems to be a complainer an actual powerful drug that could have side effects. But more important, it may be prescribed in a case where there are no appropriate drugs or treatments presently available, but the physician does not want the patient to feel that there's no hope. The point here is that in many cases, the patient taking the placebo has remarkable reductions or recoveries from physical symptoms. And some of these are cases in which there is no known cure. In summary, the power of the placebo lies in the mind of the individual using it. It is the power of belief, anticipation, expectancy or assumption that gives us such an amazing phenomenon as the placebo effect. Destructive assumption, negative placebo effects. Beneficial placebo effects come from positive assumptions. Just as powerful, though, are negative assumptions. The point we made earlier about separating the placebo effect from the physical treatment applies to negative assumption also. How many people may have received beneficial physical treatment without having positive results, or having less positive results, because their feelings or expectancies were negative? The following study gives an example of certain types of effects from negative assumption. A placebo was substituted for a drug called mefenecin. When the placebo was taken instead of the mefenecin, it produced the same negative reactions in the patients as the real drug itself would have. Symptoms such as nausea, heart palpitations, abdominal pain, buildup of fluid in the hips, dizziness, skin rashes, and anaphylactic shock occurred as a result of administering the placebo. I have found that most people intuitively sense the truth of how we can mentally affect ourselves. You've done it yourself, either positively or negatively, to one degree or another. You probably can remember someone who, through chronic stress reactions, mentally set himself up to be sick. Seeing this, you may have thought to yourself, he's going to make himself sick if he goes on like that. And he probably did. Of course, this same phenomenon also exists in a positive way. Will the smart rats please raise their hands? The following is an example that doesn't directly apply to the types of assumption phenomenon that we've been discussing thus far, but does demonstrate some fascinating, serious, and far-reaching results. It demonstrates how a person's belief can not only have substantial effect on them, but on other beings around them also. The experiments, which were conducted by Dr. R. Rosenthal, involved two groups of rats, which were being timed in their progress through a maze. The graduate students who were conducting the experiments were told by Dr. Rosenthal that one group of rats were very smart and would complete the maze quite rapidly, whereas the other group was rather dull and would be much slower. In actuality, the two groups were essentially identical in intelligence and previous performance time, but the students believed, that one group was better than the other, and their beliefs actually changed the rats' performance. The rat group they assumed was superior did remarkably better than the supposedly dumb group. Obviously, something that the students thought and or did had a significant effect on the outcome of the experiment. Similar studies conducted with school teachers who were told that certain children were exceptionally bright or exceptionally dull had the same results as Dr. Rosenthal's rat experiments. This type of effect is one reason good scientific experiments are done in a double-blind fashion, where even the researchers don't know what the subject is, so they can't influence the outcome of the studies by their own assumptions. Subconsciousness. Some psychologists are now saying that the majority of cognitive activity is outside of the conscious mind's realm. As we mentioned earlier, some say as much as 98% of our actions, thoughts, and emotional impulses come from the subconscious. This new evidence corresponds with the children's ancient Atlantean teachings, which we also mentioned earlier. When you start looking at the research from all the fields of both medicine and psychology, things get even more interesting. Spiritual masters, teachers, have long known the profound effects of the subconscious and the power of the mind. But again, Medical research into the effects of hypnosis have substantiated how directing the mind can do such things as block pain, constrict blood vessels to control bleeding, etc. It has also been demonstrated that during an operation, what the anesthetized patient hears can affect their thoughts and actions, which, in turn, can affect their health. For instance, a patient's subconscious will accept and process a doctor saying he doesn't think the patient will survive, or that the operation was very successful and the patient should recover. Now, with all the latest psychological evidence, modern science is realizing that the subconscious mind has a powerful, previously unsuspected by them, control over many aspects of our lives, including feelings, thoughts, actions, and decisions. The biocomputer. Other than the examples of assumption and belief that we just discussed, how did we come to believe all the things we believe? All the beliefs that are involved in making us what we are? Since a great deal of who we are and what we are is a sum of our beliefs, it sure seems like we ought to know why we believe what we do. The day after I contemplated Zain's comments about my prostate problems being related to my subconscious, I had a glimmer of realization about my beliefs, and asked him more about how and why we believe what we believe. Some beliefs are developed through our direct experiences, but primarily we had many of our beliefs programmed by our culture and the family, friends, teachers we'd had throughout our lives. Some of this programming has been by training. Other programming took place very subtly by osmosis, just by being exposed to people and their behavior. The subconscious mind is much like these new electronic computation devices. Our mind has memory storage that remembers all of our past experiences. It is also programmable and has been programmed by our experiences, especially our thoughts about our experiences. Average humans lack knowledge and understanding of this, and just leave their programming up to others, to outside factors, and out of their control. In other words, the creation of the thing, the subconscious mind's program, that determines a substantial amount of what people think, emotionally feel, and physically do, they have left to chance. Even worse, it has been left to the selfish and dark manipulators of the world. But those aren't the only sources that we get programming from. Everyone's programming has been from data coming from all kinds of sources. Our programming gets altered or created from our experiences with the predators and manipulators of the world, the manipulated human sheep of the world, human laws, unwritten social laws, either taught to us directly or indirectly picked up by observing the behavior of others, our own careless, conscious thoughts, etc. Even our observation of universal laws, like seeing the results of the law of cause and effect, stick your hand in fire and get burned, and deeper concepts, creates and alters programming. Out of our control programming is a vitally important fact. We have a mind full of programmed intellectual half-truths, which make up the foundation of our beliefs. And we didn't do the programming. And these beliefs, which we didn't program, dictate our actions, good and bad. Someone else's beliefs are running your mind, and thus running your life, which essentially means someone else is in control of your life. Think what that means, Peniel. All the people in the entire world, are basically robots running on programming deliberately designed by others or haphazardly created, but usually a mix of both. Realizing the full significance of this is immensely important. Once one does, it becomes clear that we must analyze all our beliefs and feelings about things from as high a state of consciousness as possible and reprogram ourselves. Zain's remarks were shocking, scary, but so obvious and true. I had to reprogram myself, and I wanted to do it fast. But how? And what programming did I need to change? And what was all right to keep? I took a deep breath and asked him. Finding and analyzing your programming. Reprogramming ourselves can be done in several ways. Author's note, these will be discussed later. But first, we must know what to change in our programming. There are different ways to become aware of what we want to change. Some things are obvious, like diet or smoking or some such thing. But unfortunately, most of our own bad habit patterns are negative subconscious programming that is out of our awareness. Meditation can help, particularly contemplative meditation, contemplation. In the more expanded and aware state of mind that meditation creates, a person can better contemplate and examine their beliefs and subsequent feelings and thoughts about all kinds of issues. Such contemplation can also help you determine whether a particular belief, feeling, or thought is positive, constructive, and thus should remain in programming, or is negative, destructive, and should be removed or replaced. The results of some of our negative programming is often pointed out to us by friends or relatives, but most people ignore such criticism from others. And unfortunately, sometimes criticism is given during the heat of an argument, which makes it even more difficult to accept. So even though someone may give you truthful and valid criticism, because the separate self goes into a stronger defense mode in such situations, its basic ego defense mechanisms usually defeat your even becoming aware of your problems. For instance, I'm sure that during an argument you've had someone say to you something like, "You're always so such and such," or you've said it to someone else during arguments. It doesn't usually get anywhere because the separate self's defenses go up, right? Regardless of whether what is being said is valid or not, and sometimes it is valid, and sometimes it's not. When someone criticizes you, sometimes that's just them projecting their own problem and trying to transfer it to you, or it's partly true, but mixed with their own viewpoint or tainted and distorted by anger, envy, or whatever. But many times it may really be revealing an actual problem that you have, something you may want to change if you thought about it and gave it a chance. But the problem is, even when they are mirroring your own problems to you, if the criticism is contaminated, because they have their own problems mixed in, they're not a clear mirror of your problem. And that makes it much more difficult for your selfish separate self and your true inner self to accept the truth in it, or even see what part is true and what isn't. So straightening yourself out with the help of such unclear mirror criticisms and opinion is like trying to shave or do your hair using a very dirty, extremely warped funhouse mirror that is distorting your true reflection. It can still be done, of course, but to even see yourself clearly at all, through such unclear, distorted, contaminated criticism, you must first have transcended your self-defense mechanisms. And if you aren't at a level of consciousness in which you're free from your separate self-defense mechanisms and ego, how are you going to be able to even see your negative programming problems, let alone have an opportunity to change them? Well, we're coming up on a new section here, so I think I'm going to take a little break and put on some music, and I'll see you in just a few moments.